What's up everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Eric and I'm a professional film photographer based out of San Francisco, California. And today I'm going to go over a DIY copy stand that I have that I use essentially to DSLR scan my film. I've been DSLR scanning my film now for about 2 years and it's been like the best method. I can't describe how time effective it is, how crisp my images are, and how I can just print them out really large by either sending them to a printer or just to have really nice high quality scans. So as you may know, if you are thinking about venturing into the world of DSLR scanning, I encourage you to do that. It's really great and it's also very, again, time effective, but it is expensive, unfortunately. When you go down to DSLR scanning, this market is ran by only a few different people or a few different companies, and pricing is really crazy. The reason I decided to make my own copy stand is because the copy stand I wanted was like almost $500, and the other ones that seemed to be a lot cheaper just had really horrible reviews, and I can't imagine myself spending $200-300 on a crappy copy stand for it to be sitting in the corner of my room just collecting dust, because I really don't scan that much film. So I find this method to be very helpful and very affordable, especially if you're somebody that just wants to experiment with copy or with DSLR scanning. This is a really good method. It's gonna cost you under $65 US, which is really cheap, I mean, compared to what you see out there. And this is also gonna be fairly sturdy and it's gonna be created by you, so that's pretty cool, right? So let's get started on the things you're going to need to essentially create your own copy stand. The first thing that you're going to need is a level surface. So a cutting board is going to be perfect. A cutting board is flat, so when you put your light table on this, it's going to just be perfectly flat. And then once you put the other attachments, which I'm going to go over here, you'll see how easy this works and how just effective it is. In order for you to have a successful scanning station, you're going to need two main things. One is making sure that the area that you want to scan on is flat, and two is making sure that your camera is level. What ends up happening with DSLR scanning and what makes it really difficult is just making sure that both of those things are aligned perfectly. If your surface is uneven, when you go to take a picture of your negative, you're going to have areas of that specific image that are going to be very sharp and some that are going to be very blurry. And if you do the same thing with your camera and it's not level, what's going to end up happening is your pictures are going to just be very uneven when it comes to sharpness. And that's obviously something that you don't want. So make sure that the cutting board you're getting is flat. And I usually say that because a lot of individuals like to go to thrift shops. I've noticed that the thrift shop cutting boards sometimes are warped because they've been wet or they've been kind of tossed around. So just keep that in mind if you're going to be getting a used cutting board, that it's perfectly straight and not like warped. The second thing that you're going to need, or the second and third thing you're going to need, are some galvanized pipe and galvanized pipe fittings. This right here is a floor flange, and this essentially is going to connect the galvanized pipe to the cutting board. As far as the galvanized pipe, this one right here is a 1/2 inch thread and it's 24 inches long. You don't need a pipe that long, especially if you're going to be just DSLR scanning. When I went to the hardware store, they only had 24 inches, which was the closest measurement they had to what I needed. I needed 18 inches. I think the next one up was like 36, which was obviously way too large. So 24 inches did just fine. To give you an idea, when I DSLR scan, my camera is typically here or up here for 120. So 18 inches is more than enough for the scanning needs for the average person. When you're buying these, make sure that you're matching the thread to the bottom of this. I think the first mistake I made was I bought like a 3/4 floor flange and then I got a half. So when I came home, I couldn't put it together. Huge nightmare. So just make sure you're paying attention to that. The next thing that you're going to need is a SmallRig or just a camera clamp. This is the one I have and it's by SmallRig, and this one is really, really strong. And you want to make sure you don't cheap out on your clamp, because the last thing you need is your camera to collapse in the middle or fall in the middle of your scanning session and potentially damage your lens. I've been using this for about 2 years now and I've had no issues at all. It's just a miracle and it just works really well. And also the inside of the claws have a grip, So when I attach this to the galvanized pipe, it just sticks very, very well, which is something that you really need when it comes down to this. The last thing you're going to need is this right here, which is a shoe mount level. This goes on the camera itself. So when you hang your when you attach your camera to the galvanized pipe, this will be on the camera hot shoe mount to let you know if the camera is level on all of the axes, which is really important for DSLR scanning. And then lastly, you're gonna need 4 screws, which are gonna cost you probably a few cents. Just make sure they're long enough to go into the cutting board and not too long that it penetrates and you can end up cutting yourself. These ones are about maybe 1 inch, which is fairly small for a screw. So that's just gonna make sure that everything is in line very perfectly when we go to put this together. So that pretty much covers everything that you need. It's super easy. I mean, these things you probably have laying around your house. Camera clamp is probably something you already have. The galvanized pipe and the fitting, probably not, but the cutting board, you know, if you have one that you don't use at home anymore, that will work too. Just make sure it's not too filthy and not warped. And now let's get to the actual part of putting this together. So let me move the camera down a bit so I can show you how to assemble this. So what I went ahead and did already is I already made the holes on the actual cutting board just to make things a lot easier. But you want to make sure that this flange is going to be perfectly in the center of your cutting board, and make sure that it's vertical. You could do it horizontally, but just make sure that the cutting board is wide enough so you have that space to actually put your light table on. If you put it up here, you'll see right away that I run into issues if I want to do it long ways, which is obviously I don't want that. So the reason I did this vertically was so I can actually, you know, use my light table both, you know, vertically and horizontally, and that works out really, really nice. So I'll just show you real quickly how you can see right away that it is very level, and that's perfect for DSLR scanning. So let me put the screws on the flange here, and then I'll show you the next steps as far as what we have to do, but it's pretty easy. What I ended up doing is I used my drill just to make these really nice pre-holes, so when I go in to screw them, it's just a lot easier. And I'm just gonna do this real quickly, and then we can move on to the next part of the next part. So now that we've done that, you'll quickly see this is what it should look like. The flange should be right in the center of your cutting board, and that's gonna serve as the baseboard. The next step is to get your galvanized pipe and just perfectly put that into that floor mount. And then it should look something like this. Super cost effective, and I think my favorite thing about this design is that when you're not using it, all you have to do is just unscrew this pipe, and then you have the cutting board, which you can put easily and just hide it around if you need to, and the pipe you can just put like in your closet when you're not scanning. So it's a pretty space-saving technique as well. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook up the camera to this, and I'm gonna show you what this looks like once everything is all set up. So let me get that set up and I'll show you. So this is the final product and what your copy stand should look like. It's really basic, really easy, but you can see that the baseboard is perfectly level. And then you have the level on the camera that's also letting you know it's perfectly level. So this right here creates really nice scans, and it's really easy. And all you need is just basic galvanized pipe, a cutting board, and that pretty much assembles your entire setup. Pretty easy to think about. But yeah, so this is what I've been using for the last few years, and it's been working fairly well. I recently obviously upgraded the cutting board. I did get one from Goodwill that was essentially warped, so it wasn't working for me anymore. So yeah, this is pretty much the overall setup, and I think it works really, really well, and it probably will work really well for you while you save up to get a better or a more sophisticated copy set in the future. Thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you found this video useful. I think my favorite thing about this method is how cost effective it is and how sturdy the overall finished product is while you save up to get a more advanced copy stand in the future. But I think it's going to be really important when you first start off in DSLR scanning to invest in the DSLR scanning masks. I think when I first started, I didn't invest the money in DSLR scanning masks to try to create my own mask, and that was a huge failure. So, you know, Negative Supply is probably one of my favorites when it comes down to quality. The Pixelator is one of the most affordable options, and there's also Veloy, which I haven't really got to explore very much. Hopefully in the future I get to try some of their products, but for the most part, I'm going to be reviewing some DSLR scanning masks over the next few weeks, so you can start getting an idea of what my workflow is and just how I create the images that are on my Instagram as well as on my YouTube. So thank you so much for sticking around once again. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and make sure you share this video with somebody who is considering buying a very expensive copy stand, because this overall design can save them a lot of money right now, and you know, they could really, you know, splurge later on. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!